Afternoon. I guess I get the spot where everyone just wants lunch and is not really that interested in investments by this stage. So I hope I can keep it at least a little bit interesting. But given the actuary jokes, probably not. So let's give it a go. So I think this is what Simon alluded to with the information, so it ties in quite nicely. We all want to understand, we want to gain knowledge, but it's kind of at odds with remaining sane. So hopefully I can distill all of that knowledge into something that's a bit easier to follow, and we can come out with something useful at the end. So I recently got back 2 days ago from a trip to Zanzibar and Serengeti. So I'd like to create an analogy between this and retirement. Many people think of retirement as a holiday. So imagine I rocked up at the airport on the day I decided to pack my bags, and I said to them, "Hi, I'm going to Zanzibar," when I got to the gate. But I hadn't booked my ticket, I hadn't done anything. That's what many people do with retirement. They get there. Let's say, by chance, maybe I could still get a ticket, even though they only fly once a week. Let's say I picked the right day by chance, and I go there and I get there. Maybe the accommodation's full, so I don't stay quite at the place I hoped, but, go with it. And maybe at the end of it all, it's funny and I can write a blog and, get some people to follow me. But who wants to live in retirement for 20 years in a terrible state and maybe blog about it? Then it's not funny anymore. But yet, we treat retirement totally differently. It's like all logic just, I don't know where it goes, it just disappears. So I'm going to take you through how members move from pre-retirement into retirement, and then how we should look at drawing down and how we should look at post-retirement. So many of you here are these people who are helping the members. You're basically assisting them, creating structures. There's many people looking at their fund, and they generally have their hands held through it. But suddenly, when they move into retirement, they're sitting, this long journey ahead of them, holiday, if you want to call it that, and it's really hard to know what to do. Those people suddenly aren't there anymore, and how do they make the right decisions? As I said, with a holiday, it's not that significant. If it goes wrong, it doesn't matter. But with retirement, the reason it's so important to talk about is because of the massive impact it can actually have on you. So let's look at some ways that we could consider actually helping members. So National Treasury's alluded to some of the things, and I think they are very useful. They've spoken about having default, having annuity, is making sure that the default annuity is appropriate. They potentially said maybe they're going to have limits on the simplicity of the portfolios that can be used in the default, and so forth. And then if you look at tools, so as Simon was saying, they need to be personalized. Just giving people general education, it doesn't mean that much for them. You need to make it specific to their circumstances and their needs and what's happening in their life. So I'm going to take you through some of the thinking around the tools that we're busy developing for retirement and helping people to actually make those decisions. As I said, hopefully it won't put you to sleep, but will actually give you something useful to go think about in how you engage your members. So it always begins with a goal. So essentially, as Rob was saying, people need an income because suddenly now you finished work, you're not getting your salary anymore. So who's actually going to sustain your lifestyle? And you need that for a set amount of time. So are you happy to plan for 10 years and then your kids are going to look after you? Maybe you're okay with that. What sort of horizon do you want? Those are the two primary ones. Then if you look at the others, they're still critical. Inflation. Let's say you start out with 10,000 Rand a month in retirement. In 13 years, that's effectively worth 5,000. In 26 years, that's only worth 2,500. I don't know how many people here can live off a quarter of their current salary. So if you don't plan for these things, you're basically planning to fail. The same with a holiday. Then flexibility. Many people haven't saved enough, as you heard from Fikile, that 90%. So if you haven't saved enough, you might want to do the odd job initially, and you're happy to take a lower income, and later you need more income. Or maybe the converse. You're younger, you'd like to travel a bit more, see the world, and when you're older, you're happy to spend more time at home and maybe not be as active. And then lastly, an estate. It was also brought up by one of the earlier speakers. So many South Africans just really dislike this notion of the fact that their hard-earned money that they've saved and sweated for 40 years just disappears. It doesn't go to their family or their kids or their heirs. So many people want to have an estate. So let's look at an example. I'm probably not pronouncing this correctly, but for Tsabang. So let's say he's now 65. He's saved diligently. He's got 1 million Rand. And Paul, I don't know, she spent it all on shoes. She hasn't got any money left. And let's say he's happy to get an income of 5% a year, so it works out to about 4,200 a month. Obviously, like most people, he wants it to grow with inflation. He would like flexibility. He would like to leave that money to Paul if he passes away and she's still around. And let's say he wants it to last to about age 90. He thinks, well, if it's longer than that, I'm sure his kids will help him out, or the state. Okay, so his two primary goals are 4,200 Rand a month up until age 90. So what actually affects his goals? Because now he's got these, but as we heard, things don't always quite turn out the way we had hoped. Okay, so there he is there. Let's say maybe instead he realizes this million rand's not quite enough. He's going to retire a bit later, maybe at 70. In that case, he doesn't need as much money because he's retiring later. He has a shorter term. Alternatively, how healthy is he? Is he still hiking every weekend and going for long swims, or does he know he's maybe not that healthy? So again, that affects how much money you're going to need. Then what about his income? We're talking about having aspirations. Maybe he wants to leave money for the education of his grandkids. Does he want his income to grow, or is he happy that in 26 years' time it's going to be worth a quarter of what it is today? So these are all things that affect it. And if we were instead looking at Paul, she's a woman. Women live longer, so she needs to have more money. As I said, she didn't save maybe. So if you're providing for you and your spouse, again, your goal needs to go higher. And then maybe they decided to have a kid in their golden years, so they're still supporting somebody, their child. So all of these things influence your goals. So as Simon was saying, it's important that you personalize it to the individual and that you're not just generally educating them, saying, well, if you need more money, then, it's not specific to them. How much more do they need? Does he need 100 Rand more a month? Does he need another 500,000? What does it mean for him specifically? So he now gets there, and now he needs to convert this to an income, as Rob was saying. He can take a portion of cash. We know that's changing, so that only going forward it's only going to be a third cash, but the remainder he has to buy an annuity with. So what does he do? There's two main products, a living annuity, which I'm going to call an investment product as such, and a guaranteed annuity where you hand over to the life insurer and they basically look after you. So if you look at the living annuity, you choose where you want your money. I like this portfolio, I like that, or I think this is going to work, wherever you put your money. And every single year you can elect, this year I would like 5,000 Rand, next year I want 6,000, next year I want 4,000. So you're in control, you have the flexibility, and if something happens to you, that money goes to your heirs. So it all sounds good, but if you live to 100, 110, your money might not last. So in exchange for that flexibility, there is a cost to that. In contrast, if you look at a guaranteed annuity, that will last for the rest of your life. You don't have to worry. I was at a seminar recently. It was a financial seminar, and they had a futurist talking. Always got to bring somebody interesting in to break up our boring talks. And he said the person who's going to live to 1,000 years has already been born. Now, I'm not sure if I believe that, but good luck to all the insurance companies if that happens, because they've promised to pay this for the rest of their life. So we'll see what happens. But you've got that protection, but then you have no control, no flexibility. Let's say you can never get them on the phone. You're waiting at the call center for an hour. Tough luck. You can't change products. You've given away your flexibility and estate in exchange for that protection. So you can see there's a trade-off. So if you summarize what that trade-off is in terms of the person's goals, I'm looking at an inflation-linked annuity. So basically what that means is your income is also guaranteed to grow with inflation. As we said, that's quite an important goal. So here, when I talk about affordability, what I mean is your starting income suitable? So when you go to the insurer, they'll say, this is what we're giving you, that's it. So generally, for most people, it's not affordable, which is why many people go into a living annuity. And the other reason many people go in is, as an advisor, it's not always appropriate. Would you like 1% every year or 1.5% once of the person's product? So there's two things at play here. It's people's greed, and then also sometimes intermediaries don't always give appropriate advice. But if you look there, it gives you longevity protection. It will last your life. You've got inflation protection, but you've lost the others. And a living annuity is the exact opposite. So you can see most people want to meet all these goals, but they might have to make a trade-off. you can't have everything. You could look at splitting them, and I mean, that's obviously something the fund could consider in terms of defaults. But like with anything in life, you can't always have what you want. You have to trade off and make decisions. So I'm just going to go a bit more into living annuities because they're a bit more complex. The guaranteed annuity you hand over and it's pretty much done. So in a living annuity, there's 2 deductions that come off, and people always forget this. They talk about what is a suitable income to draw, what is safe to take, but they forget that you can't talk about an isolation of fees, because let's say, in this case, Tabang is taking 5%. What happens if his total fees to all the parties is 2%? Then he's actually taking 7%. Is that still sustainable? So you've got to sum up the 2 and look at the total in terms of what is sustainable. And as you can see there, the income each year can be between 2.5% and 17.5% each year. So that's where the flexibility comes in. Another important consideration is the term. Generally, you're still a long-term investor. So that speaks as well to the portfolio. What investment is suitable? National Treasury spoke on their paper that many people's living annuity portfolio is extremely vanilla. So despite all the hundreds of portfolios that are out there, generally it's quite simple and it's more or less a medium equity portfolio. So if the life expectancy is about 20 years in South Africa, is a medium equity portfolio appropriate for a 20-year term? And I can't remember, somebody asked the question there, well, isn't high equity risky because you're drawing down money? So we're going to talk a little bit about that in the output I'm going to show you. So to get to the actual results, which is the more interesting part, is we're going to assume that Tabang's going to increase his income with inflation every year until he can't, till he reaches that 17.5% and the government says, sorry, this is the maximum you can take. We're going to show you everything after inflation. So if you see the 4,200 staying the same, that basically means it's in today's money. So it means he's growing his money with inflation. And we've looked at all sorts of scenarios. So it's from 1900 to 2013. You heard Stephen speaking, the booms, the highs, the lows, the crises, the crash, and all throughout this he's drawing an income. So you're going to see the impact of high equity when you're withdrawing. We're looking at the 3 portfolios. We're going to assess low equity, medium equity, and high equity on average returns, and then also in poor returns, because that's where the concern comes in with high equity. Look at that, and then we're going to look at 2 fee scenarios. We're going to look at low fees and high fees. So the 10x fee is going to be a maximum of 0.86%, including VAT, and that will come down depending on the balance. And then we're going to compare that to the industry. So you see it's 2.85%. It's made up about 1.5% of investment management. So that includes your performance fees. It's got your platform fee or admin fee of 0.25. You've got VAT in there. And then you've also got the advice fee of about 0.75%. Okay, so we're going to begin with average returns, normal market conditions, nothing too hectic. And we're going to look at the low fee scenario. So here you can see, I don't know if you can see the green that well, it's 84 years. So it doesn't meet his goal of 90, but it's not that bad. It's nearly 20 years, which is what life expectancy is. But now let's say instead he moved towards medium equity. Well, he's gained 11 years. So there's a big difference between the 2. And then if you go to high equity, it's off the chart, but it's basically age 114. So that looks great. So why don't we all go into high equity? Because who doesn't want your money to last for 114 years? So then that question comes in, but I'm not so sure, because if markets have one of those crises and I've just retired, then it's probably going to have an impact. So let's look at, I'm going to call it the 1 in 4 worst scenarios. So if you had this scenario, basically 75% of the time you'd do better, and only 25% would you actually be worse off. So if you look at that, you can see it's a big, big jump. So your 114 years is now 90 years. So you can see you've lost a lot. Whereas on the low equity side, you've only lost about 5 years. So you didn't lose that much. But still, that said, although your losses were much bigger in comparison on high equity has still done better. So we've got to ask ourselves the conventional wisdom of let's be conservative because we're drawing down. What is more conservative, money lasting to age 79 or money lasting to age 90? And this is in poor market conditions. And I mean, you can make the stress testing worse. You get very similar results, which is quite interesting. So these 2 charts, I don't know if you can see, they look pretty much similar. It looks almost like I accidentally made an error and pasted the same chart twice, but I didn't. Basically, this is average market conditions again, so we've gone back to normal markets, but instead of low fees, you're paying high fees. So basically what this tells you, and it was even surprising to me when I ran the numbers, how close it was, that paying high fees is like guaranteeing poor returns, because basically you're certain of paying that fee. So for them to get back to average market conditions, they've first got to recover that 2.85% that's been deducted before they get back to the average, which is, I find, very interesting that it's so close. So would you pay for something that's certain in exchange for something that might or might not happen? Because often there's a link between the more you pay, the better the quality. So I think it's just a good thing to think about, to question, is that always the case? So I just put the summary up so you can see the high fees or poor returns, because they're pretty much the same, basically cost you between 5 and 24 years of income. So how many people are happy to give away 24 years of income? Don't think that many. So we've got to really reassess and think about the way we're doing things. So the important question, and I put this in especially for Rob with Argentina, are we reaching our goals? Some of us, maybe not. But just a reminder, his goal was $4,200 a month to age 90. How does he actually get there? Well, if it's average markets, a medium or high equity is going to get him there with low fees. If it's poor markets, only a high equity is going to get him there with low fees. So what is more risky, low or high equity? I'll leave that question with you. And with high fees, he actually never reaches his goal. He just misses it in high equity by 1 year. But these are the type of things we need to give to members. We've taken their personal position, and we run the numbers, we take them through it, and then they can make the decision. Many people, from what I've seen, who I've shown this to, still won't invest in high equity in retirement because they just have this feeling that it's too risky, but that's okay. They at least understand the implications of their decisions, and it's personal to their situation. So just to end off, to remind you, the things we can do to help our members is, many things are along the lines of what National Treasury is saying. So having default annuities in place, making sure that the products are simple and easy for people to understand, and then also providing our members with tools that are interactive, hopefully that they're on their smartphone, that they can access easily, that are personal and specific to them. And only in low fees and medium or high equity can you generally reach your goal. And 5% is conservative. Many people draw much more than 5% a year. So the higher you draw, the more you've got to think about being in high equity. And then your high fees that actually cost you 5 to 24 years of income. Alternatively, you can say, if you happen to be unlucky and be in one of those bad market scenarios for that whole term, then it's also cost you 5 to 24 years of income. But obviously you have limited control over that. But you do have control over who you invest with and the portfolio you invest in. Thank you.